Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked away from a woman, emotionally, physically, maybe even silently, and instead of her moving on like you expected, she suddenly became more interested, more attentive, almost as if she could finally feel your presence more now that you were gone? It's a paradox, isn't it? One moment she seems distant, distracted, maybe even cold, and then, the moment you pull your energy away, something shifts. She starts texting more, calling, checking in. Her silence turns into curiosity, her indifference morphs into longing. Why? Because when a man walks away, not out of manipulation, not out of bitterness, but from a place of deep self-respect, he activates something in her psychology that few ever talk about. Not a trick, not a game, but a primal recognition that the space he leaves behind is more powerful than his presence ever tried to be. In today's video, we're going to explore exactly why women can't resist coming back when a man walks away. And we're not talking surface-level tactics. We're diving into the emotional undercurrents, the psychological triggers, and the magnetic energy of what happens when a man reclaims his center. This isn't about hurting her. This is about healing you. Because sometimes, the most irresistible thing a man can do is simply choose himself. So many men confuse walking away with giving up. They see it as defeat, as a last resort, as something reactive, done out of frustration or emotional exhaustion. But what if I told you walking away, when done from a place of clarity and inner alignment, is actually the most magnetic move you can make? You see, most women are used to being pursued. They're accustomed to the rhythm of a man leaning in, trying harder, giving more when she pulls away. It becomes a dance, one where she leads through withdrawal, and he follows through effort. But the moment a man stops playing that tune, the entire song changes. And not because he's trying to manipulate, but because he's finally listening to the music of his own soul. That's where this begins. Not with her, but with you. Let's be honest. How many times have you stayed in a relationship long past its emotional expiration date? How many times have you tried to explain your worth to someone who already knew it, but just didn't value it? How many times have you begged with your energy, even when your words were silent? We do this. We all do. Because love makes us afraid. Afraid to lose what little connection we have left, even if it's half-hearted. Afraid to be alone with our unmet needs. Afraid to believe that someone else could love us better. Or perhaps even worse, afraid that no one ever will. But here's the first truth I want you to hold in your chest like a prayer. A woman cannot desire you deeply if she senses you're emotionally dependent on her validation. Desire requires space. It requires polarity. It needs air to breathe. And if you're always there, always available, always chasing, she doesn't feel your presence anymore because your presence has become invisible. Women are intuitive creatures. Even if she doesn't consciously recognize it on some level, she feels when your attention comes from a place of fear. And fear is not sexy. Fear is not powerful. Fear doesn't inspire attraction, it triggers avoidance. But when you walk away, not because you're punishing her, not because you're trying to make her chase, but because you finally understand your value is not negotiable, something profound happens. She feels the absence of your need, and in that space, she starts to remember who you were before you started shrinking to fit into her silence, before you began walking on eggshells, before your love became more about convincing her than connecting with her. She starts to see you again. Not the man she managed or dismissed, but the man she once wanted, the man she still might. This is where the psychology gets interesting. Human beings are wired to assign value to what we might lose, not what we already have. The scarcity principle isn't just marketing, it's embedded in our brain chemistry. When something is consistently available, we stop appreciating it. But when something is suddenly gone, the brain interprets that absence as significance. Why did I lose that? Was it important? Did I take it for granted? She starts replaying moments in her mind. Not just the arguments or the cold spells, but the tenderness, the time you listened without judgment, the time you offered your vulnerability, the way you touched her lower back like it mattered, all the little things she never quite said thank you for. But here's the catch, this only happens when your walk away is authentic, when it comes from emotional groundedness, not ego, when it's not about proving a point, but reclaiming your peace. That's when it touches something deeper in her, because walking away is not about leaving her, it's about returning to yourself. When you're in that space, when your energy no longer says, please pick me, but instead whispers, I finally picked myself, that's when she starts to wonder, who is he now? What has changed in him? And why does his absence feel heavier than his presence ever did? You don't need to say a word. Silence can speak louder than declarations. Your distance becomes the mirror she never expected to face. And in that mirror, she doesn't just see herself, she sees you and what she might have lost. Now, let's pause here, because I want to make something clear. Not every woman will come back. And that's not a tragedy, that's a blessing, because the right woman, when faced with the weight of your absence, will not only reflect, she will remember, and she will reach. But the wrong woman, she'll let you go, and you must let her, because your worth is not tied to whether or not she realizes it in time. Your power is not measured by her reaction. It's measured by your ability to walk away without resentment, without blame, and without the need for closure. That's the real trick. Not walking away hoping she'll chase, but walking away because you finally stopped chasing your own self-worth in her reflection. A woman feels this shift on a cellular level. It confuses her, excites her, disarms her, because most men don't do this. Most men live in anger or stay in fear, but you're doing something rarer. You're choosing solitude over disrespect, stillness over drama, clarity over chaos, and she may not admit it right away. She may not show up with flowers and apologies, but something changes in her mind. A seed is planted, and every day you don't reach out, that seed grows. Not always into a relationship, but into a recognition of the man you've become. And this is where the second layer begins, because when you stop orbiting her emotional gravity, when you step out of the pattern of pleasing, proving, performing, you allow your energy to shift. You move from the wounded to the sovereign, from the seeker to the chooser, and she feels it, because even from a distance, women can sense when a man has come home to himself. She may scroll your social media. She may ask mutual friends how you're doing. She may have dreams about you, intimate, strange, aching dreams, because energy leaves fingerprints, and when your energy no longer pleads, it echoes. This is the moment when she starts to romanticize the version of you she once knew and regret the version of herself that couldn't meet you there. Not always because she wants you back, but because she sees now what she didn't see before, and that vision haunts her. But again, this isn't about her. This is still about you, because when you choose to walk away, you must also choose to not look back in desperation. You're not waiting by the phone. You're not refreshing her stories. You're not counting the hours since her last text. No, you are moving forward. And in that movement, in that inner recalibration, you become a man who is no longer controlled by the temperature of someone else's love. You become a man who generates his own warmth. And let me tell you something, that is the kind of heat women never forget. Because when a woman feels the heat of your absence, and you don't come running back the moment she flinches, she's not just faced with your silence, she's confronted with your evolution. The man who used to apologize just to keep the peace now walks in peace, even if it means walking alone, and that is unsettling in the most intoxicating way. Now, I want to say something that will challenge you, something that might sting a little if you're still in the thick of emotional withdrawal, but it's important. Sometimes, the moment you walk away is the first moment she actually sees you. Not because she didn't know you before, but because she finally realizes you're no longer hers by default. And in that realization, something ancient awakens in her. You see, modern dating often robs people, men and women, of the very tension that creates desire. It makes everything too available, too fast, too transactional. We swipe, we match, we text, we meet, and we mistake proximity for connection. But true longing, true attraction, that doesn't come from constant contact. It comes from mystery, from space, from the unknown. When you walk away, not with bitterness, but with elegance, you restore that mystery. You become the unanswered question in her mind. She starts wondering where you are, who you're with, if you've changed. Not because she wants to control you, but because something inside her now feels incomplete. It's not addiction. It's not insecurity. It's memory meeting mystery. And that cocktail is powerful. But let's go deeper into why this psychological trigger works. It's because you've disrupted the power dynamic. In most relationships that are imbalanced, one person holds the power of emotional scarcity. They withhold affection, validation, consistency, and the other usually unknowingly chases it. But the moment you stop chasing, you flip the script, not as revenge, but as self-respect. You're no longer the emotional beggar. You're the man who realized his hunger deserved better food. This kind of shift is subtle but seismic. A woman can feel it in your tone, in your delayed replies, in your disinterest in proving yourself. She might think you're being cold. She might accuse you of changing. But what she's really sensing is the withdrawal of your emotional dependence. And she doesn't know how to categorize that, because most men don't get to that point. They either explode in frustration or they fade into passive resentment. But you're building a life without her. And not out of spite, but out of necessity. This is the second layer of the psychology, because once you begin to walk away in truth, not in pretense, not as a tactic, you become a man she can no longer predict. And unpredictability is electric. Why? Because we're not drawn to what we fully understand. We're drawn to what challenges our assumptions. So when you're no longer emotionally available on her terms, when you're no longer the man who waits for her mood to dictate the relationship dynamic, she's forced to face a reality she never considered. You might actually be fine without her. And not just fine, better. Not because she was the problem, but because you were finally willing to stop dimming your light just to keep her comfortable. That realization is a mirror most women don't expect to see. And if she's emotionally mature, if she still has love for you, if she has done any self-reflection at all, she will feel the pull, the ache, the grief of who she was when you loved her most, and who she might now have to become to ever get that love back. But remember, your value isn't in whether she returns. It's in the fact that you've stopped waiting. Because a man who waits too long becomes a man who betrays himself in slow motion. And no woman can respect a man who abandons himself for her. So if she does come back, and some will, she'll do so with a different energy, not entitled, not distant, but curious, submissive to the moment. She'll ask how you're doing, not just to check in, but to check herself. She'll want to know if she still has access to you, not out of ego, but out of reawakened desire. And in that moment, the ball is no longer in her court. It's in yours. You get to decide from a place of power if this is still a connection worth reopening, if she's grown, if she's seen the truth about how she showed up, if she's capable of meeting you at the level you've now chosen to live at. And maybe she is, but maybe she isn't. And either way, you've already won, because the real win isn't getting her back, it's getting yourself back. Let's talk about what this looks like in the real world. When you walk away properly, you're not just cutting contact and sitting in your room waiting for a text. You're rebuilding. You're reconnecting with your purpose, your friends, your body, your values. You're reinvesting in the parts of yourself that were neglected while you were busy trying to be enough for someone who couldn't see you clearly. That's where your energy goes, not to her. To you, because masculine energy thrives in progress, and nothing is more attractive than a man who has redirected his heartbreak into productivity, not avoidance, not distraction, but a deeper alignment with who he is becoming. This is not about pretending you don't care. This is about no longer needing her to care for you to feel whole, and in that shift, everything changes. Because now, if she does reach out, she finds a man who no longer speaks the same emotional language. You're not cold, you're not arrogant, but you're clear. You're calm. You're not waiting for breadcrumbs. You're not analyzing emojis. You're not negotiating your dignity for temporary comfort. And she feels it. And if she's emotionally intelligent, she'll respect it. She may even try to rise to meet it. Because women are not drawn to brokenness. They're drawn to strength. But not the kind of strength that screams. The kind that stays still. The kind that says, I'm okay either way. This is how walking away becomes the most powerful psychological trigger there is. Not because it's a manipulation, but because it's a revelation. You reveal who you really are when no one is watching. You reveal what you really need when no one is giving it. You reveal how much you've grown, not to her, but to yourself. And that kind of revelation, it cannot be ignored. It haunts, it whispers, it seduces. But above all, it liberates. So if you're wondering whether you should walk away, ask yourself this: have you already tried staying small? Have you already tried over-explaining, over-giving, over-committing? Have you already tried being available for someone who was emotionally unavailable to you? Then maybe it's time. Time to stop convincing. Time to stop waiting. Time to stop hoping that your suffering will eventually earn you a reward. Because love isn't a reward, it's a reflection. And if her reflection no longer matches your vision, then walking away is not a loss. It's a return to the man you were before the performance began, and to the man you're destined to be when the curtain finally falls. And as you return to yourself, something sacred begins to unfold, something that doesn't need to be spoken or proven. It just lives in your posture, your pace, your eyes when you meet the world again. You no longer look around for someone to make you feel chosen. You are the one who chooses, not because you're closed off, but because your heart now knows the cost of opening too easily. This is the emotional maturity that walking away teaches you. And yes, it's painful. It's confusing. It brings up old wounds, those childhood echoes of am I enough or will I always be abandoned? But you sit with those wounds now. You don't rush to numb them with another woman or another bottle or another late night scroll. You face them. And as you do, something within you begins to heal. Because the truth is, so many men never learned how to stay with themselves when it hurts. We were taught to chase comfort, chase validation, chase the next thing that makes the ache disappear. But healing doesn't work that way. Healing requires presence. And the moment you stop chasing her is the moment you start chasing your own wholeness. That's when everything changes. Your confidence no longer comes from her compliments. It comes from how you show up in your life. You don't flirt to feel worthy. You flirt because you feel full. You don't text to fill the silence. You let silence be your witness. You don't beg. You don't persuade. You exist fully and unapologetically. And that is magnetic in a way that no strategy ever could be. Women feel that energy even through a screen. They feel it when you stop orbiting their moods. When you stop waiting for them to initiate. When your words become fewer but fuller. Measured not by effort but by embodiment. You are no longer performing the man she wants. You are becoming the man you respect. And if she ever comes back, it's not because you baited her. It's because your absence became the most honest mirror she's ever looked into. So now what? What happens when she returns? Because yes, sometimes she does. She reaches out. The message is simple, maybe even casual. Hey, stranger. Or, I heard a song today that reminded me of you. Innocent enough to protect her ego, but layered enough to test the waters. She wants to know, are you still the same man who once waited with open arms? Or have those arms finally wrapped around someone else? Perhaps even yourself. This is where your power is tested, not in your response time, not in the cleverness of your reply, but in your clarity. Do you want her back? Not do you miss her? Not are you lonely? Not would it be easier to go back to the familiar, but truly, is the man you've become still aligned with the woman she is? That's a hard question, because sometimes we confuse nostalgia with compatibility. Just because someone was once a chapter in your story doesn't mean they belong in the next one, but we cling to memories. We hold on to the way they laughed in that one moment, or how their hand felt in ours, or how they knew our favorite songs, and we mistake comfort for destiny. But you must ask yourself, has she grown too? Has she done the work? Or is she coming back because your growth made her afraid of losing control? That's the subtle trap, because sometimes a woman doesn't return out of love, she returns out of disruption. Your absence disrupts her pattern. Her ability to predict you gave her power, and now that you're no longer predictable, she's rattled. She doesn't necessarily want a relationship, she just wants to know she can still have access to your energy. But you are no longer giving your energy on demand. You've stopped being emotionally open to anyone who hasn't earned the right to witness your softness. And if she's truly changed, she won't just want you back, she'll show it. Through consistency, through depth, through humility. She won't expect to pick up where you left off. She'll understand that to be with the man you are now, she must meet you there. Emotionally, spiritually, practically. And if she can't, then you keep walking. Because here's the most radical truth of all, sometimes the lesson isn't in rekindling the flame, it's in knowing when to let it burn out with grace. Not because you're bitter, but because you've learned to love without losing yourself. That's the real goal, isn't it? To love and still be whole, to connect and still be sovereign, to give and still be grounded. And that only happens when you stop being addicted to being chosen, when you stop bending to fit into someone else's indecision, when you stop believing that love must be earned through suffering. It doesn't. The right woman will not require you to sacrifice your dignity in exchange for her affection. She will meet you fully, honestly, boldly. And if she doesn't, you'll be okay, because the man you've become doesn't chase anymore. He attracts, he creates space and watches who's willing to enter it with reverence. He speaks truth even when it risks rejection. He protects his energy not to be distant, but to be discerning. And when he loves deeply, fiercely, openly. But only those who can love him back the same way. So yes, walking away may cause her to return. But the question is not whether she comes back. The question is, will you still be there? Or will the version of you who once waited have finally outgrown the need? Because real growth means you don't need her to come back to feel whole. You already are, and that is the one thing she was never prepared for. Wholeness doesn't mean you don't feel. It doesn't mean your heart doesn't ache when her name appears on your phone again. It doesn't mean you've erased the memories, the laughter, the little rituals the two of you used to share. Wholeness means you remember all of it and still choose peace. You carry the love, but you no longer carry the weight of trying to be enough for someone who couldn't hold it. This is where you start to understand that walking away was never about power. It was about clarity, and clarity is quiet. It doesn't argue. It doesn't defend itself. It doesn't need to explain its choices over and over again. It simply sees the truth and honors it. And the truth is, sometimes you have to lose her to find you. There's something deeply sacred in realizing that your emotional availability is a gift, not a guarantee. That your loyalty is valuable, not a default. That your softness is not for the careless. It is for the courageous. You've become a man who no longer confuses longing with love, who no longer mistakes tension for chemistry, who no longer romanticizes the chaos just because it made you feel alive. That wasn't love. That was survival. And you're not living in survival anymore. You're living in alignment. Now, I want you to imagine something. Really picture it. You're sitting at a quiet cafe. Maybe weeks, maybe months have passed, and she walks in. She sees you, back straight, voice calm, eyes clear. You're not performing. You're not cold. You're simply present. You offer a smile, not out of attachment, but out of peace. And in that moment, whether she says it or not, something inside her softens. Because you're not chasing anymore. You're inviting. And an invitation from a grounded man is far more seductive than any desperate plea. If she comes back, it's because the space you created became more compelling than the chaos she was used to. But again, let me remind you, her return is not your reward. Your reward is the man you had to become in her absence. The man who sat with his loneliness and didn't let it define him. The man who remembered who he was before he started making himself small for love. The man who chose solitude over performance. The man who finally asked, what if I'm already enough? And when you start to live like you're enough, not in arrogance, but in truth, you radiate differently. You no longer shrink to be chosen. You stand tall and let the right ones rise to meet you. You begin to see relationships differently. You no longer see her as the only one. You realize there are many women out there who are capable of loving you well. But more importantly, you realize that the best relationship you'll ever have is the one you build with your own integrity. That's the kind of man women remember. Not the one who texted first. Not the one who gave the most gifts. But the one who walked away with grace and became better for it. Because you know what stays with a woman longer than your presence? Your absence, when it's dignified. Your absence when it forces her to confront her patterns. Your absence when it echoes louder than your words ever did. And maybe, just maybe, she'll come back with open eyes, with new respect, with the kind of vulnerability you always wanted. Maybe she'll sit across from you and say, I didn't realize what I had until you were no longer there. But you won't need that. You won't cling to it. You won't build your worth around it. Because by then, you've already made peace with what is. You've already let go of the outcome. You've already remembered that love isn't about possession. It's about alignment. And if the woman you once loved can meet you in that space, great. But if not, you'll keep walking. And you'll keep walking with your head high, not because you didn't love her, but because you finally love yourself more than the idea of being wanted. There's something terrifyingly beautiful about that kind of self-possession. It draws people in. It makes them question their own reflection. It makes them rethink how they treated you, not because you told them to, but because your absence became undeniable. You see, most people don't remember the ones who stayed too long. They remember the ones who left well. That's what makes you unforgettable. So if you're in that moment now, standing at the edge, heart pounding, unsure if you should pull away or hold on, ask yourself this: am I being true to myself? Or am I still trying to be enough for someone who refuses to meet me halfway? And if the answer is painful, let it be. Let the grief come. Let the tears come. Let the disappointment rise and crash over you like waves. But when they pass, and they will pass, you will stand stronger, not because the pain didn't happen, but because you let it move through you instead of moving back into what broke you. You are not just a man walking away. You are a man walking towards something greater, greater self-respect, greater emotional maturity, greater alignment with what you actually want in love. And here's the secret that no one tells you: when you begin to live like that, the universe rearranges to meet you. You begin to attract people, opportunities, love that reflect the man you've become, not the boy you used to be. And that woman who once took you for granted, she'll feel it. She'll feel it every time she opens her phone and scrolls past your name, every time she remembers how safe she felt with you, every time she hears a joke and wishes she could share it with you. Not because she needs you to rescue her, but because she's finally realized she may have let something extraordinary slip through her fingers. And if you do choose to let her back in, if the circumstances align, if she's grown, if you both are willing to show up differently, then let it be a conscious choice, not a comfort zone, not a relapse, but a reunion built on new ground. A love that has been tested and tempered by time, but only if it feels like truth. Because the man you are now doesn't settle for less than that anymore, and she knows it. That's why she comes back. Not because you begged her, but because you stopped. Because the moment you walked away was the moment you stopped chasing her and started choosing you. And that choice, my friend, changes everything. It changes how you walk through the world, how you hold eye contact, how you respond when someone tries to test your boundaries. It changes the kind of women you entertain, not the ones who are the most beautiful or the most charismatic, but the ones who offer something deeper: consistency, softness, presence. Because now you know what it feels like to pour yourself into someone who wasn't ready. You know what it cost you to try and prove your worth in silence. You know how lonely it is to be with someone who doesn't see you, even when they say all the right words. And you never want to feel that again. That's not bitterness, that's growth. It's knowing that your energy is sacred. Your attention is currency. Your heart is not a liability to be guarded with suspicion, but a treasure to be offered with wisdom. So when she comes back, if she does, you meet her with clarity, not walls, not bitterness, but a strength she hasn't seen in you before. A quiet, embodied certainty. You don't need to convince her of anything. You simply let your energy speak for you. And she will feel it, that you're not the same man she left behind. That time didn't make you colder, it made you deeper. That your silence wasn't punishment, it was prayer. That your absence wasn't a manipulation, it was a message. You said everything you needed to say by saying nothing at all. And the message was this: I will no longer participate in love that asks me to betray myself. That's the kind of message a woman never forgets. That's the kind of man she never forgets. Because you didn't just walk away, you transformed. And transformation leaves an imprint. It alters the chemistry of what once was. It changes the music. And if she wants to dance again, she will have to learn the new rhythm. But here's the most beautiful part. By the time she returns, you may no longer be standing still. You may have moved on, not just physically, but emotionally. You may have met someone new. Or you may have fallen so deeply in love with your own life that the idea of compromising for someone who once confused your presence with convenience feels unimaginable. And that, because now you love differently, not with desperation, but with discernment. You no longer seek to be needed. You seek to be seen, fully, intimately, unapologetically. And the woman who can meet you there, who can witness your fullness without fear, who can hold your heart without control, who can honor your masculine energy without needing to tame it, that's the woman who will feel like home, not the one who ran when things got real. Not the one who needed you to dim just so she could feel bright. Not the one who only called you too much when you finally asked for your needs to be met. but the one who knows that presence is a privilege, and your love is not a handout. That's the kind of woman who won't wait for you to walk away to realize what she has. She'll know it the moment you walk in the room. And she won't play games. Because the woman who truly sees you doesn't need to manipulate your attention. She earns it by showing up fully, consistently, lovingly, with grace. And you'll feel it. You'll feel how easy love becomes when it doesn't require you to abandon yourself to keep it. You won't be performing anymore. You'll just be living. And if the woman from your past watches all this unfold, if she feels the echo of your absence as you build something new with someone else, she may finally realize what she lost. But it won't be yours to carry. You gave her the chance. You showed up fully. You loved deeply, and then you walked away beautifully. That's closure, not slamming the door, not revenge, not rubbing your happiness in her face, just living your truth out loud. And that truth, my dear listener, will ripple into every corner of your life. You'll show up differently in business, in friendships, in family. You'll stop tolerating half-heartedness. You'll stop shrinking in rooms where you were born to stand tall. You'll stop over-explaining your worth to people who were never qualified to receive it in the first place. Because the moment you walked away from her was really the moment you walked back to yourself. And it's there, in that sacred return, that everything starts to align. This is not about turning your back on love. It's about turning your back on self-abandonment, on emotional starvation, on romantic patterns that felt familiar but not safe. It's about rewriting your internal script, one that no longer says, I have to earn love, but instead whispers, I am love, and I will only share this with someone who treats it like gold. So let her come back, or let her stay gone. Either way you are whole. Either way you are worthy. Either way your journey was not in vain, because the pain cracked you open, and in that opening, something divine poured in. Clarity, confidence, conviction. And now you lead with that, you walk with that, you love with that, and no one, not even the woman you once ached for, can take that away from you. This is your moment, not to chase, but to choose. Not to beg, but to become. And when you become the man who no longer fears walking away, you become the man who never has to, because the right woman won't let you, not out of fear, not out of guilt, but out of reverence, because she'll see it in your eyes, that you are not a man to be lost twice. And you'll finally believe it. So take a breath, stand tall, smile. You didn't lose her, you found you. And that is the kind of man no woman can ever truly walk away from. Not really, not forever, not when you've finally remembered who you are.